The Stellenbosch University racial incident that sparked widespread outrage has brought the country's racial tensions back into the spotlight. On Thursday, thousands of angry students at the university protested at the institution, calling for an end to the deep racism culture they say exists at the university. Last week, a video of a white student urinating on the property of a black student surfaced, with widespread calls for the expulsion of the accused. Babalo Ndwayana has since laid criminal charges against Tens du Toit. For reaction on the story, I'm now joined by Stellenbosch University vice-chancellor for learning and teaching, Professor Deresh Ramjugernath. Prof, good afternoon. Thanks for speaking to us. Now, we know that Professor Wim de Villiers, who's the vice-chancellor, issued a public apology. What was the context of the apology? What was the institution apologizing for?
So, Hugo, good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers. I think the institution was appalled by the incidences that took place at the Huis Marais, as well as with the subsequent incidents of a rape at one of our other residences. And the apology was really about that these incidences should never be taking place on our campus. And then the university was very saddened by the events.
So are you taking accountability for what's transpired as far as racism is concerned?
Hugo, I think racism is something that's alive and well, not just in South Africa, but globally. The universities in this country are a microcosm of the country and of the globe. And so without doubt, we're going to end up with incidences of racism. This is not something that's widespread in our belief on the campuses, but we are going to see these kind of incidences due to the universities being a microcosm of society.
Now, what is the basis of you suggesting that it isn't widespread? Because according to allegations from students, I mean, in that promo that we read, it is deep-rooted. Now, deep-rooted does not suggest that it is an off-the-bat chance. It suggests that it is there since, since time immemorial, so to speak, and has not been listening over time.
Hugo, I think we listened to our students. I had the opportunity to go out and listen to some of the complaints on Monday afternoon. There are definitely lived experiences by our students on campus, and we can't deny that. We can't deny that they have lived these experiences and that there are incidences of racism. I think the university has gone at lengths to saying that this is something that we're going to look at very, very carefully within the institution. And as a result of that, we have commissioned an inquiry that will be chaired by a judge, an independent inquiry that will be chaired by a judge that will look into these incidences of racism on our campus.
Now, talk to us about the constitution of this committee, if you will. Besides the retired judge, who else will make up the panel? If not necessarily specific individuals, but almost the demographic, if you will, of those persons that will be part of this committee.
I can't go into details of the composition of that panel at this point in time. All I can say is that we've got a very respected judge that will be leading the inquiry, and it'll be up to the judge to make the decision as to how they constitute any further panels or a composition of an inquiry.
Is this judge a person of color? Are you able to say?
This judge is a person of color.
Now, the next issue is the Rector, Vice-Chancellor, Professor Wim de Villiers, said that there's zero tolerance for racism at the institution. Define for us what zero tolerance means to you.
Zero tolerance is that if an incident does have to take place, the university will use its full might in terms of ensuring that there's disciplinary actions that are taken against the perpetrators and that they're brought to justice. And that is what the university is doing. In every instance whereby we have had incidences that have been brought to attention, that have been reported, the university has investigated it and is investigating it, and is putting the matters through the disciplinary processes that we have within the institution. In parallel, the university also assists the victims in terms of reporting to the South African police services and for taking up the matter through other criminal channels.
So I think what would interest a lot of people certainly is not the reporting mechanisms or the dealings with instances of racism, but that racism shouldn't exist. Now, I'm a loyal football fan, and one of the things that you now see across the globe, is individuals taking the knee, for instance. So
Sure.
my question coming back to you is, there's an induction process when students come into Stellenbosch University. Part of that induction process, does it speak to issues of racism or the zero tolerance attitude that the institution has to racism? Or is there an expectation that students will come into the establishment and there will be no racism?
Within the institution, there are many training programs that we actually have for students within our residences, for student leaders within our residences, as well as for the general first-year student body. So during part of our welcoming processes that we have within the institution, there are all of these initiatives in terms of inducting and orienting the student to university life. And some of the training that does take place is around social cohesion and about issues around racism and so forth. However, we do believe that that can be significantly strengthened, and there are actions in place to ensure that we do that.
Now, obviously, one of the topical issues is around a black student who was a victim of racism, but also, according to media, on the 12th of May, an Indian student asked for an Indian song to be played at the law's faculty dance, but received a degrading response from a white law student. The university's judicial society said she was humiliated by the answer, and the person near her did not help, but laughed. So in some instances, it might be small issues that aren't necessarily reported. Now, how do you plan on tackling these issues moving forward?
Hugo, what we've done is that we've now created a dedicated hotline for specifically issues around racism and discrimination. And that will be fully dedicated, where matters will be taken up and then obviously investigated. We have found in instances of this nature that the matters were not reported to the institution, but were reported external to the institution. And so what we also would like to encourage is for the matters to be reported internally, so that internally we can investigate and then follow the due processes with regards to instituting disciplinary action against the perpetrators.
So this is almost a case, sorry, Prof, to harp up on this,
Yep.
a situation where the horse has bolted, let's try and stop it. But how about trying to stop the horse from bolting altogether? How about dealing with the students and engagement, if you will? Is it possible for these youngsters that come into university to unlearn racism, to catch them before they offend their colleagues?
Hugo, that's a very good question. I think people come in with particular mindsets and behaviors and things that they've learned. And one of the initiatives that we're pushing in a big way at the institution is around modules which will be compulsory for every single student to undertake, so that they can understand issues around discrimination, GBV, harassment, and so forth, as well as so that we can actually start to really build a socially cohesive community on the campus.
Now, what we do know is that a few days ago, a petition started for the expulsion of Tenzin Tutoy. I think it had 100,000 people on it. So clearly, there is a following, a huge amount of people that believe he should be expelled. Where are we right now with certainly the proceedings that have been taking place to establish what actually transpired and whether or not he will be expelled, or what penalties will be leveled against him?
Sure. Hugo, where we are at the moment is that a charge sheet has been put together. So our student disciplinary committee has instituted a charge sheet which has been handed over to the perpetrator. He has now 72 hours to respond to that. Thereafter, the chair of the disciplinary committee will make a decision as to whether we go into a full inquiry. And then the respondent would have basically 10 working days to prepare for the inquiry and for the trial. So that is where we are at the moment.
Now, finally, before we let you go, Prof, something else that has also come up are issues around rape at the establishment. I believe there's an individual who's been charged, who's out on a R1,000 bail. What can you tell us about that incident, and certainly what measures you're taking outside of that one in particular to safeguard and protect students?
Hugo, we're absolutely appalled and saddened by that incident. And I think it's you would see the communications out by the university with regards to really ramping up and increasing security on the campus, as well as ensuring that we have the maximum amount of support for our students during this difficult time, psychosocial support for our students. But it's also is something that we're looking at very carefully in terms of our residences and the kind of rules around visitors into our residences.
Professor Deresh Ramjugernath, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Learning and Teaching at Stellenbosch University. Thank you for your time this afternoon, unpacking those issues around racism and that incident of rape which has recently been reported.